Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Huddle Up with Howard. I'm Mike Claiborne, along with a Missouri Hall of Famer and All American Howard Richards. He's with us today. And normally we get into games that take place over the course of the week, be it college or the pros. But Howard Richards, obviously, the bigger news this week was the situation involving Brian Flores, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, who decided that enough was enough. He's suing the Dolphins, the Giants, the Broncos, and oh, by the way, we're going to give the NFL a little business as well. And I got to tell you, I said this to you and some other people. If we thought the Rams in St. Louis and the NFL was going to be landmark, I think this one will make that one look like a primary. I think this thing has so many implications to it.
It does, from equal rights opportunity, rights. This is going to be a federal case, I believe, once it's all said and done.
No, it already is.
It really, yeah. Well, see, there you go. This case, I think, could ultimately really change the NFL and make this league far more responsible and accountable and transparent. And that's essentially what the lawsuit is trying to do. Brian Flores is his allegations are exposing what he feels or the league's negative practices, hiring practices against people of color, in his case African American, and it's something that not only does he feel should stop, but a lot of black coaches before him felt the same way. And this is a case, as of right now, it's just Flores' case, but ultimately it could evolve into a class action suit when others start to join. And others have already spoken out already.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson has been one that's spoken out already.
Marvin Lewis.
I would think Jim Caldwell might have a contribution to this conversation as well. But, it has so many implications. But the other issue, aside from the discrimination angle, the fact that Stephen Ross allegedly was paying to lose. So now we're talking about the integrity of the game. Now, this is a game that is based on integrity and the gambling aspect that comes with it. If the gamblers feel like this isn't a safe bet, then the NFL finds themselves in bigger trouble. I mean, again, like I said, this thing goes in so many different directions. And I think as we start to learn more and more, I don't know if certain people are going to survive this.
Yeah, I totally agree. If it's not it started with the concussion lawsuit, of course. Then what evolved out of that? Race norming, which you talk about a humongous black eye. Of course, the NFL has said, this is no longer going to be a practice, but it's like, what next? What's the next thing? You just saw the NFL and the Rams, I will say, lose a case. For all intents and purposes, they did. And they settled the case with the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County. But there were smoking guns all over. Yeah. And the owners were protected and decided to settle because they didn't want a lot of the information, especially financial information, exposed. But we could safely assume, I believe, that there was so much back material that had that stuff gone to trial. I'm not saying St. Louis would have won, but the exposures for a lot of these owners could have had, monumental effects, probably on the negative side if that had happened. So that there's stuff out there. But listen, you've got to take your hat off to what Brian Flores is attempting to do. Probably sacrificing his ability to coach again in the league. We don't know that. I mean, we can safely make that assumption. We can make that assumption, but you just wonder who's going to step up and hire him in light of this lawsuit that was recently filed.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I'm reading today that he's a finalist for the Houston job. But that's even playing with the pen out of the hand grenade when you say he's a finalist, because now you're saying, well, he didn't get it because he sued. I mean, it has so many things that come with this. And I know Brian Flores just a little bit, not well enough to call him a friend, but I know other people who know him much better than me who say there's no one better than being a stand-up guy than Brian Flores. So the question is, with this machine that we see with the NFL and their media lackeys, how are they going to formulate a strategy to try and discredit him when everyone that knows him and can speak from him from a character standpoint? His laundry list, he's going to have a list from here to Pittsburgh as far as character witnesses if it goes to trial. Throw in the fact that you've got the Belichick text messages. And again, I think as time goes by, we're going to learn more and more about this situation that's not going to look good for the NFL. You mentioned the litany of things that have taken place. You play in the NFL, but you follow other sports. Have you ever seen a commissioner that's been more embattled with things that don't have anything to do with the games than we're seeing with Roger Goodell? We can go back to Deflategate, Spygate. You mentioned the concussion protocol. There's so many things that have gone on here with this commissioner.
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. Now we learned that Hugh Jackson had a conversation with the commissioner about his concern with Jimmy Haslam wanting to tank when he was coaching in Cleveland. And we never heard it before now. There's so many things on this guy's watch. And as it was said to me yesterday, well, you know what? He's making 35, 40 million. He's got access to a plane whenever he wants to when his career is over. I don't know if he really cares at this point because he has carried the water for these owners for so long that, I don't think it really means a bigger difference. He takes a bullet here and there and he keeps it moving.
No, I agree. I think the role of commissioner in sports leagues is really misleading because essentially you would think the commissioner would be a neutral entity that sits between the owners and the players or the Players Association. That's not the way it was. Essentially, the commissioner really represents the owners here.
Yes.
And I have long advocated the fact that these leagues need a true commissioner, a neutral party that can legislate, mediate, arbitrate between the two sides. That I think would make all of the sports league that much better. Because right now you've got the Players Association and its executive director, the commissioner, but you don't have anyone in between that can really be the deciding factor. And I think if you really want to improve all these leagues, you need to put that person in place.
I think that's a great point. It's something that's long overdue. And we've always given the commissioner the respect of basically running the league, but he was running the league on behalf of the owners, and you can pick whatever sport you want. And as we've learned, I think that's one of the reasons why we see such contention between players and owners. You can look at baseball. We've seen it in football. The National Hockey League's been shut down twice for that very reason, because that person was doing the owner's bidding. And I think that there should be some sort of act put in place where there's a person or a committee. You can do whatever, however you want to do it. But that commissioner, that title as we know it, should not be bestowed on Roger Goodell, Gary Bettman, Adam Silver, or anyone else who basically gets hired by the owners.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I know it probably wasn't my idea. I'm sure it wasn't my idea from the beginning.
Well, you go ahead and claim it. I'll back you up on it. Don't worry about it. I got you.
I haven't heard anyone else talking about it, though.
There you go.
You may have heard me say this for several years, but yeah. I think this is something that really needs to be looked at. And, maybe we put this podcast out there nationally and start that conversation, Mike.
It is national. Let's take our first break. We'll come back with Huddle Up with Howard after this.
St. Louis Acura was the #1 Acura dealer in Missouri in 2021, and we were the 17th in the nation for Acura sales volume. We sell over 100 pre-owned vehicles monthly, and we service all of the makes and models that we sell. We are waiting for verification of our 30th Acura Precision Team Award, the only dealer in the nation with so many awards for customer satisfaction and dealership performance. We have 300 pre-owned vehicles in stock right now. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.
We're back with Huddle Up with Howard. He's Howard Richards. I'm Mike Claiborne. All right, so we still have some teams that have openings. Let me ask you this: were you surprised at what Minnesota did? They invite Jim Harbaugh in. He basically had told some people within the Michigan front office that he was waving his goodbyes because he thought this was it. He goes there and they don't even make him an offer. And then they go out and they're going to hire, or at least that's the report. And I'm a little leery on reports these days after the Tom Brady fiasco, but the reports indicate that they're going to hire the offensive coordinator from the Los Angeles Rams, another guy who's never coached as a head coach and has had reasonable success this year, but doesn't have the resume that Bieniemy, doesn't have the resume of
Harbaugh.
Harbaugh,
Mm-hmm.
the coordinator in Jacksonville. I mean, in Tampa, Leftwich. I mean, there's a number of guys who have paid their dues and have the resume to go with it that seem to be overlooked once again. So this whole hiring thing is probably got to start over again just to gain credibility, because I've seen this, and I know black coaches who will take a pass on an interview because they all know it's a facade. They all know it's a line of bull, and they don't want to be part of it anymore.
Yeah, it has become a little bit of a travesty. And you just wonder how much this attention, this new lawsuit actually will hurt the league. I don't know that it hurts the fan base, because you're still going to have the support for the league, but I think it really will, in long term, it may affect a lot of the advertisers that whose companies are committed to IDE, talking about inclusion, diversity, and equity in the hiring place, in the workplace. And, with so much money being thrown at the NFL every year, it's probably going to come down to a situation like with the new they're now the Washington Commanders, with what happened with Dan Snyder. FedEx says, enough is enough. You will change this name or we're going to pull out. And I think it's going to take a band of companies, a band of corporations, market or advertisers, if you will, to go to the league and say, you know what, this is ridiculous. We're paying you all this money and we're watching you continuously do bad things to very qualified candidates. And this does not work well with us. It doesn't work well in America. If you got to stop if you want our money. And that's what it's going to take probably before change really becomes relevant in this league with regard to hiring practices.
Well, I think we started to see the early stages of that with the Colin Kaepernick ending, where I think there were some companies that had basically said, all right, enough is enough. This is creating too much of a distraction, where we not only have our employees inquiring, why are we supporting this? We now have our customers wondering, why are you supporting a league that doesn't seem to have their act together? And now here we are again. I go back to Roger Goodell. It's on his watch that we have another off-field fiasco that I don't know if they can dodge. So there's so many things that go with this. So what do you do? I mean, how do you start over again? Because the current model doesn't work. And it just seems like all the owners do is find somebody that they hired to show them how to circumvent how the rules work.
My guess is something like this will occur. Some group or some individual suggest a quote unquote blue ribbon panel to really examine, how the NFL has decided or conducted interviews and decided on who's being a head coach before. When you look at the quality or the qualifications of individuals that have been passed over as head coaches as compared to those that have gotten jobs as head coaches, you're going to find that the disparity will raise a lot of questions. And then that panel ultimately will make recommendations. And my guess, this panel may be vetted by a lot of these corporations that are pouring money into this league. That's what I think, at first thought, that's what I think could very well happen. It actually could be effective if you get some federal litigators involved in it. Then I think that may be the way. I'm not sure if that's the answer, but it may be something that actually forces this league to do something and do it much more quickly than you would if you allow them to do it on their own.
You mentioned federal litigators. It's interesting. The NFL has one of the biggest lobbying organizations in Washington. So we may have to look in another direction because they will put the heat on somebody to make sure this bill doesn't get passed or this legislation doesn't get passed. And some congressman or senator will all of a sudden have a better seat at his football game when he goes to. So I don't know where it starts, but it's got to start soon because I think the Flores thing is the tip of the iceberg because I think they have other issues that will come into play down the road, but this is the first and foremost one.
How ironic was it that the lawsuit was filed on the first day of Black History Month?
I was thinking the same thing.
I don't know if that is a coincidence or
I don't think it was. I think that somebody had sat down and figured this out.
And I really believe, just looking through some of the articles that I've read about this case, I think this was meant to happen. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
That text exchange with Belichick and Flores. I mean, how do you talk about smoking guns?
Yeah.
And he basically said, well, I've been told by sources that they're going to hire Dable.
Exactly. So let me get this straight. You coach another team and you got a 3-day head start on the job before I even go. You know about this 3 days in advance before I even go in for the interview.
Well, and we know why, because these guys have coached under Belichick and Nick Saban. I'm sure they were both probably consulted on Brian Daboll and his qualifications as a coordinator and as a leader. And we haven't heard Saban's name come up yet, but
it's early.
It's early. Yeah, right.
Don't worry about it. Hey, as we look at this thing, I want to be clear on something. I see these guys, these white coaches get hired, okay? And I'm not telling you that they can't coach. And I want to be clear on that. I'm not saying that they can't coach because we don't know. Just like we don't know if the black coaches can coach or not. I think what really troubles me is the resumes of these assistants that aren't getting a legitimate look. They always finish with the silver or bronze medal when it comes to being on the podium for the job. And again, I don't know if this guy from LA can coach or not. I guess we're going to find out because they're going to make sure he's got a job. I think my issue is the path that they take has few landmines and few obstacles compared to people of color who work as hard, if not harder, to get something going here. And they find themselves always at the altar. So again, I want to make sure people understand these white coaches may be deserving, but their path is a whole lot easier than their African-American or people of color's counterpart.
No, you're exactly right. And you would think that from a public relations standpoint, that as obvious as the Rooney Rule has become, and which I think was kickstarted by the Fritz Pollard Alliance, you would have thought that the NFL would have really taken some significant steps to alleviate this, what I believe has become a public relations fiasco, a public relations nightmare for the league.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
But here's the thing. Until people challenge the monopoly that it is, they don't have to do anything. And that's the way it's been. And now it has become so large now that I really do believe that a few heads will ultimately roll when this thing is all said and done. It may take a while, but I think if it's done properly, there will be significant changes in how the league does this and how teams hire head coaches.
Let's take a final break. We'll come back and visit more with Huddle Up with Howard after this.
The The future of electric vehicles is beginning to grow across the Midwest, but there's a lot of work to be done before most people will feel comfortable switching from gas to EV. Ameren, Illinois President and Chairman Richard Mark gives us some insight into how they're preparing by adding more electric vehicle charging stations.
Our vision is to basically have charging stations every 60 miles or so, from Cook County all the way to the tip of the state down to the Kentucky area, and then across the state, east and west, going toward Kansas and Iowa to the west, and going toward Indiana to the east. And so we feel that within the next few years, we'll probably add, we're hoping to add 60 to 70 a year over the next 5 years to really complete that infrastructure for the entire Midwest. In fact, the Midwest now has all the utilities in the Midwest are joining together to coordinate that. So, which is the first time it's ever happened that you've had Wisconsin say, okay, we're going to build our charging stations here, and Illinois say, okay, well, we can tap on here, and Missouri, this makes sense for us, so we can expand that north, south, east, and west by coordinating with the other utilities.
Final segment with Howard Richards. All right, I'm gonna do the lightning round here, alias aka Frank Cusimano. Yes or no's? We will have 2 African Americans as head coaches filling 4 of the voids that are still open.
Yes.
Stephen Ross, if proven that he was trying to convince his coach to tank games, will lose his team.
Yes.
You mentioned shakeup within the ranks of the NFL. Where does it start?
At the top with the commissioner.
It's a lot of money to pay off a guy who, well, that's a good point you make, but good luck on that. Maybe he'll have an early retirement. What do you think?
He deserves it.
They got to change the culture.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that they've got to change the culture.
The culture and the structure.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There was one other question I had for you with regards. So you think there's going to be 2 coaches hired?
I think they're going to do it, to sort of save face a little bit. But here's the deal. Flores is essentially, I don't know if he mentioned it directly or his legal team mentioned it. If he gets a job, this lawsuit's not going away.
Right.
Because it has the substance to continue to do what it needs to do, to pave the way for those that come behind him to ensure that they get fair and just opportunities and get hired when their credentials say that they should be.
Final question for you. Brian Leftwich is considered by a lot of people one of the smartest people football's ever produced. He was a very bright guy as a player. He's been a very bright guy as a coordinator. Tom Brady speaks volumes of him. With all those credentials behind his name, why hasn't the Jacksonville Jaguars hired him to be the coach of their football team and their prized possession, their young quarterback?
My guess is that they are looking at other candidates just to ensure that they're not overlooking anyone. But here's what we don't know is Leftwich, who really isn't speaking about it. Does he want to be the coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars? Because that this is a team that they've been struggling for a while. They have not had the pieces in place to continue to, I think, build at a much more hastened rate as, say, like look at the Bengals over the last few years. They've really elevated themselves. They've gotten the right pieces in place. They've made some really good selections in the draft. That's something that Leftwich as a coach has to weigh. Can I work with this general manager? Are we on the same page here? Will I be successful? And if I will be successful, how long will it take? Will it come in Jacksonville, or is that opportunity going to be better somewhere else?
All right. Well, we covered this ground. We will talk Super Bowl next week. Final thoughts from you?
No, I listen. I think this you really have to give credit. It's very brave and brazen, if you will, move by Brian Flores. But I think he realizes that this is something that has to be done.
It's bigger than him
in this league. It is much bigger than him. For him to sacrifice his own career, I mean, it speaks to martyrdom, really. But this is legitimate because once it works, and I believe it will work, much like Curt Flood did with free agency, sacrifice his career, Brian Flores could be someone that we're talking about 20, 30, 40 years. Well, someone else will be talking about it, not us. As a monumental
I just want to be able to hear. I want to be able to hear 30, 40 years from now.
Hopefully it won't take that long. But listen, regardless of how far it gets, you have to take your hat off to him for really standing up and speaking the truth.
He's Howard Richards. I'm Mike Claiborne. We thank you for checking us out on ClaibsOnline.com. Don't forget, we'll be back next week to talk Super Bowl and what that's going to look like from LA. So for Howard, I'm Mike. We thank you for checking us out. But first,
the only thing faster than this supersonic golf cart are the closing times at thehomeloanexpert.com. Mortgage rates are in the twos, and we have a 21-day closing guarantee. Apply online today at thehomeloanexpert.com.